The rules are for continuous line drawing. Once you set your pen or pencil onto the paper, you cannot lift it up again until you are done with the drawing. And this is not the same as a negative space drawing. I actually want you to draw the interior, so the positive shape here. That means if you're doing a flower, I want all those inner petals. I want all the inner detail, like those berries. I want those individual berries. I want things like the veins on leaves. Just so you know, we're going to be doing quite a few of these drawings on this one paper. It's a huge 16 by 20 inch paper, and we're going to be doing a series of these, so more than one. And you can see I'm going really slow. So the idea is that you look at the object and you try and move that pen point in time with how your eyes are seeing it. So you want to work slowly, gaze at your objects, and try and document it as best you can without lifting up your pen. And I really do advocate that you use a pen instead of a pencil. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is a pen tip can flow a lot easier than a pencil point because it's graphite. The other is that graphite tends to break off while you're working. So if you're using a mechanical pencil, that could break because you're putting some pressure at the end. I'd also say that you would have to sharpen your pencil midway through if you're using a wooden pencil, so that's why I'm recommending that you use a pen. I do have some pens available if you need to borrow one for this assignment. Just so you know, I know it looks like I'm going slow here. It took me about 12 minutes to do this drawing. And again, you are drawing not just the negative space, but the interior of the positive space too. So that positive shape or form, you're drawing the inside of the petals, you're drawing the berries on there. And you're doing this all relatively life size. I'm going to speed this up for you so you can see the level of detail that I want in your drawing. Now, I don't ever have you do something without a purpose. So this is actually one of the tools that I use when I'm drawing, particularly if I'm drawing something that's an organic shape or form. So organic means like it has its own free form kind of shape. So if I'm doing a tree, I almost always switch to a continuous line to draw the outline. It helps me to not lose where I am in the scene or in the drawing. This exercise is meant to get you to look more at the object than at the paper. A lot of you are looking like 80% at the paper, 20% at the object. If we're lucky, I want you to change that ratio. So you're looking more at the object. Really look intensely. This is called observational skills for a reason. It's because you have to get good at looking at things in real time and comparing one shape to another, whether that's the shape of one petal to its neighbor petal, or if it's the shape of one flower to a different flower. And like I said, we're going to do this with more than just flowers. We will do this with other objects too. Okay, so here's what my finished piece looks like. Now it should appear like it was made out of one long wire. So it kind of looks wiry, not exactly how I'd want my finished work to look, but this is an exercise, so chill. That's how it's supposed to be. I thought we would make this a little bit more challenging and more entertaining, and it'll also give you some insight into brushwork and how to operate with paint. So this is a palette. It's a circular one. In each little of those wells, so those indents, is a color, and it's all watercolor. Yours should be dry. So the watercolors should be dry. They need rehydration to make them usable. So you should have a cup and you're going to have a brush. And watch what I'm doing, because what I'm doing there is I'm mixing the color. There is no orange, so I've got to mix it. In fact, ideally, you would be mixing every color you lay down. I think it's a very bad idea to just use the colors that exist within that palette. So I wouldn't go straight to like that kind of emerald looking green and use that, I would always mix another color into it to get a different color. Just realize there is no white, so you have to use the white of the paper as your white, or you thin down the paint to get a lighter value. Value means how light or dark a color is. So I like to start off with the shadows. So I'm working on that poppy shape. It's a red Icelandic poppy, and I'm going in straight for those shadows. And you can see I've made my own crimson. How do you make your own kind of crimson violet? You take that kind of darker red and you add blue to it. You can also experiment. I don't mind if you do some trial and error until you get the color you want. And I want to point out that you have water on your brush. It is important how you lay down the paint. So I haven't really taught you yet how to use watercolors, so I'm kind of throwing you in on the deep end on this. But I do want you to try for a few things if you've never used watercolor before. So one we already talked about was mixing your own colors and not using colors that come straight out of that palette. The other is I want you to get a variety of colors. It would be good to get a variety of values too. That means darks and lights. So like you can see, that's already happening on the poppy, that there are some dark colors, some more purpley colors, there are some more pure red colors with a little bit of yellow, and then some kind of orangey, yellow-orange colors in there too. I wanted to switch my point of view so you could see how I'm holding the brush. If you notice, I'm holding that brush far back. Look how much of that handle you can see. So I would say try holding that brush in the middle or towards the back of the handle. The reason we hold our brushes so far back is so that we get away from the paper, so that your hand's not near the paper. It's so that you can also step back a little bit. You don't need to be right up with your face pressed up against the paper. You actually want to be a little bit farther back so that you can better see your artwork as a whole. If you are standing super close to your paper and doing all this little nitpicky detail work, what happens is your drawing or painting looks excellent from about 3 inches to 5 inches away. When you step back in terms of feet, it may not look as nice. That's why it's important to give yourself some space. You want some room to be able to move your arm around, because painting's actually more of an active thing than most people think. So you want to be able to move. You want some flexibility there. I want you to notice too how I'm laying down the strokes. So you want to use both like the side of the brush to get a skinny line, and then you can use a wide part too. I also like to think about the direction of my stroke when I work. So I oftentimes pull up or pull down as needed, or I try and articulate what I'm trying to paint. So like on those petals, you might want to think about fanning out when you put down your paint stroke. You want to go for a variety of colors. Even going like two tones, or what I call ombres, so like some of those pink petals turn into kind of yellowish at the top. Also, when I'm mixing those greens, it's a good idea to add a little bit of red or brown to a green to get that earthy kind of a tone. If you just use a pure green, it's going to be very boring and flat. One of the nice things about watercolors is that it's transparent. It also dries pretty fast, so you can layer one thing on top of another. Like that leaf, I had kind of a yellow-green, but I realized it really should be darker, so I just mixed the correct value, the correct color, and put that right on top. You can get these so wet that they're drippy, but I want you to avoid that. What's going to happen is if you get it too wet, it'll, one, drip all over the place, and two, it could actually affect the board you're working on, because if that board gets saturated, it could start to get soggy, and we want to avoid that. This part of watercoloring in the contour line made it a lot more exciting for me to do, so I'm hoping you guys feel the same. It's good to explore other mediums meaning materials, so that's what we're kind of about too in an Art 1 class. I want you to dabble in other things, and it is kind of fun to get some color early on. If you want help with the watercolors, call me over. I'm happy to show you how to mix. Just make sure that you clean the watercolor palette out at the end of the day. And I don't mean wash it out, I mean take a paper towel, and if you have mixed muddy colors, you just kind of wipe the top of it. You actually never want to pour any paint or pigment down into the sink. You do need to rinse the brushes off. So at the end of the day, you would rinse off your brush, and I am going to ask that you empty out that water cup that's in that silver bucket at each easel. That's a perfect example of how you can get a really skinny line even though the brush itself looks like it's a wide flat brush. You can pull it down and get a skinny line. I like to use broken lines, by the way, for things like twigs or branches. Broken lines mean that there's a gap in there. All right, so here's the finished piece. Do you see how much white is left around that? That's good. You want to have more space because we're going to do several more of these continuous line exercises starting next class. They are going to be harder, and I do have an evil one planned, but it will help you to get better at drawing. I always have that as my objective. That's my goal, is that you get stronger as an artist.